All right, so welcome everyone to the minutes training for CivicClerk today. We're going to go over how to enter minutes in CivicClerk, hopefully show you some shortcuts that might make your minutes a little easier depending on how you enter them for your board. And then we'll do a quick preview of what it looks like. I've got a few questions actually about the format we'll get to after we enter minutes today. So we'll have plenty of time. Normally just the main part of this training wraps up in about 20 minutes, as you'll see, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and refinement and so on. So to get to minutes in CivicClerk, we go to the agenda in question that we want to take minutes for. Today, we'll go ahead and use this user training agenda. And I realize some of you won't be able to mimic all of this until you make your own board and have an agenda for your own board, because most of you are standard users for Board of Supervisors, but the process we're about to go through will work for the boards that you manage. We have everyone assigned to the proper board, so you'll be able to create yours once we do the agenda manager training, and then take your minutes with this training once it's complete. So let's go into user training today. And in the top right corner of any board you're an agenda manager for, you'll see this Go to Minutes button that we see right here. And so this is going to be how we access minutes. It initially takes us to our minute settings page, which you see here. This is mostly a landing page for the vast majority of you, more than likely. It really only has one setting that you would want to interact with, and that would be this show items by short name option right here. I'm going to recommend that you check this every time you go in. You'll see what it does in just a moment. But for now, we'll give this a check, and it's going to do a quick refresh in the middle of the page here. It's just going to be a quality of life enhancement for you as a minute taker.
Am I the only one that can't see this? I'm just seeing a black screen.
Can everyone see the minute settings page? Yeah,
I can see it.
I see it on my end.
you know, let me just reshare my screen and let's see if that fixes it for you. How about now?
Nope. I saw your lovely face, picture of your face for a second, and now I have a black screen again.
You might check and see if Zoom has two windows open. Sometimes it ends up keeping two of them open, and one would be the share, one is the another. If not, you might just log out of the meeting and log back in real quick.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
So this is really the only option you'll have to worry about here. Now, I know the county recently purchased our CP Media component for streaming. We'll revisit this page once we get that set up and going, because down here is where we can also start a stream for any meeting that needs to. But for the time being, for the purposes of this training, this is the only option you'll need to worry about. Once that's selected, you can then go up to our settings right up here in the view menu. And this is a menu that we use everywhere, right? We use this for the agenda, in the item, and in minutes. And so now we've got some minute specific pages. And what we're going to want to go to next is the minute summary option right here. Minute summary is going to take us to our overview of the agenda here. And so we can see all of the different sections and items and so on that we see here. This is very similar to our agenda page, but we're missing that information over here on the right, the date, time, things like that. This is going to be used for something else entirely in just a moment. But the basic use of minutes is very straightforward. Whatever you want to take minutes on, be it, call to order or anything else that we may see here, we're going to go ahead and click on that section or item. So we can start with call to order. And that's going to bring us to a new page with a discussion box here. And so anything you type into this discussion box immediately becomes minutes for the call to order section on the agenda. Our agenda layout is over here on the right-hand side as well. And so you can see all of our different items that are under consent or resolutions. And note how, even though this item name is probably about 20 or 30 words long, we only see the first few words in this item. This is what that show items by short name button did. And so it doesn't change how the item will look and the name will look on the agenda or the minutes document. But what this is doing is just shortening it up for us here in this column. So I don't have to scroll through a huge list of items. You know, if you had 20 items that were all 30 words long, that could be a really long list here that you would just have to navigate through. This way it keeps our layout just tight here so I can click on whatever I need. If this is not enough context for you to tell what it is, you can always uncheck that option. But navigation is really quick this way, and you can see with this resolution here, if I click on it, it takes me to the discussion box for that item, and I can always open this up to make sure I'm on the right item. So if this isn't quite enough, then you could just keep this as is so you can see it here, or you can uncheck that option if you'd like. But let's go back up to call to order now, and we'll go ahead and start entering some minutes. Now, if you want to just start typing in your minutes, feel free. You could say the meeting was called to order, and we'll say at 3:37 p.m., something like that. Now, that being said, something like call to order is typically pretty repetitive. So while this was instantly created as minutes, if this is something that you have a more formal paragraph for or something like that, we'll show you how to insert that much quicker here in just a minute. But I just want to kind of re-go over this process. Anything we type in here instantly becomes minutes. It's not published. Nothing that we do today will be published until we are ready to do that. But everything you type in on the minutes function is actually saved automatically. So unlike the item page or anything like that where you have to save any of your changes, autosave is on in minutes, because if you're taking notes in the middle of the meeting, we don't want you to have to remember whether or not you've hit save on what you just typed. So everything you put into minutes is saved here automatically. By the time you could turn it off if you'd like, or that means that you'd have to use these buttons, but I really wouldn't recommend that for the most part, simply because they're hidden, and so a lot of times people forget and lose a lot of things that they enter. Before we get into adding some predetermined text and repetitive text, are there any questions on the basic use of this and how this works?
So it's not published so that you can go back and kind of clean it up later. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. And we have some people that take some quick notes during the meeting and then they'll come back and flesh that out, or finish however they need to. It's published when you say it is, and that's typically a delay, right? So we could actually generate our minutes document when ready, put it onto the next meeting's agenda for approval, and then once it's finally approved 2 weeks or a month later, whenever that happens, you can then publish them officially on the public portal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a simple piece of minutes in here for my call to order section, but I took a look at the example that I was provided for the Board of Supervisors today, and it's a little more complicated, right? It's got the roll call in there and things like that. That is something that we consider repetitive text, or we assume it is, right? You're always going to have that in there. And so rather than have to copy and paste it from another document or type it in from scratch each time, we have a handy feature here in Minutes called Minute Snippets. And this allows us to take that repetitive text from our document, put it into the system on in a list, and then use the snippets feature here to then insert that information. And so I've got a few examples set up for us today, and we can talk about setting up more after we get through our main features. But if I use call to order here with the roll call parenthetical, it's going to insert a standard paragraph that I saw in your minutes, which is, the board met in session at the Lynn County. It's got your service center and then present. I went ahead and switched everybody that I saw to present instead of having an absent field, but this is just a kind of building block of an insert. So if someone was absent, I could go ahead and maybe not remove their name. Let's go ahead and just say absent and build that in very quickly. And so nothing set in stone when you insert it. It's very easy to change that around anytime you need. Any questions on how this works? All right. So these are very handy to have in here. Anytime you have repetitive text, this is what we want to aim to get set up, simply because the less you have to type or copy and paste, the easier of a time you're going to have with this. Looking at the Board of Supervisors minutes, some of it was a little verbatim or summary in terms of what happened, but then a lot of it seemed a little repetitive. So that'll make it very easy to use things like snippets. I've got a customer in Texas that types less than 100 words because she figured out how to set up enough snippets for just quick insert instead. So that option will be very powerful the more and more you use and understand it. For now, though, we've got our initial paragraph in here for call to order. I'm then going to go down to Pledge of Allegiance here, simply because when I looked at the example, there was another sentence here to Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll just insert that one as well. And so it's got the call the meeting to order and let the Pledge of Allegiance statement here. I'm doing these separately in the system here from call to order and Pledge of Allegiance rather than in the same one, because the way minutes works in CivicClerk is every section and item that is present on the agenda is present in some fashion on the minutes document. Now, it could be just a placeholder for minutes. I know the minutes example I looked at didn't have the name and section titles and so on in there. It was just a summary of what happened for that each item. And so that's what I've gone ahead and done today too. So there's essentially a blank placeholder for all of these sections and items. And then anytime you type in text, that'll be taken up. But because of that, since there's a placeholder for each, I am trying to put in minutes in each of these if possible, so I can have that space taken up in the document. And you'll see what I mean here in a moment once we get through to our voting and all of that. But that is the very basic use, just entering text or using snippets. We click into each section or item that we need to enter information for, and then it's all set. Any questions on this before we start to cover voting? Okay. So I know voting for the Board of Supervisors is very streamlined, right? You have that statement at the top that says, unless noted otherwise, all members voted aye, which means it looked like you just put in either your motions or had the resolution action in there. Is that right?
Becky, that's a you question.
So I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, so I guess one question I had and would like a little clarification on is the example I was sent has like the full motion
Right,
text in here where it says like motion by.
right.
But I took a look at a few examples from the Agenda Center today, and there were some that didn't have this. It was just more the action, like, approve this.
That would be,
So,
well, you might be talking about the consent agenda because on
Is that
formal
what it is?
meetings day, there is motion by, seconded by to approve consent agenda as follows. And then there's the whole list. And there's no motion by them because that motion approved the consent agenda.
Okay, gotcha. But then, so here, while we're looking at this, you don't actually list the name of the items then, right? It's just the actual action that took place, like for the motions here, or?
Well, say it's a Monday and they're gonna talk about, I can't see them all, so go here, go right here. So,
Like Mark, he's so right here, it's.
so this is a
Stephanie,
public hearing.
Yes.
So that's
Oh,
not,
okay.
that's not a good example. Okay, Rhonda. This must be an informal board meeting because Rhonda
Yes, it is, it's a Monday.
on the agenda was an amended resolution fixing yada, yada, yada. So then we go in front of that and put who presented it. Rhonda Betzworth, Deputy Auditor, presented. You went too far up. There you go.
No, I thought that's where
Okay,
it
so
was.
on the actual agenda, it probably said amended resolution fixing the 1/1/22 utility valuations. Okay, so then we go in front of that and put Rhonda Betzworth, Deputy Auditor, presented.
Yes.
Then we put at the end, the board will approve on Wednesday.
Okay,
And that's just like everybody else. Darren
Yep.
Gage, reallocating the approved use of funds for capital improvement. We added Darren Gage because we're not, the agenda doesn't say who's presenting this stuff. So we add him, we added Charlie, we added Steve Estenson. We added Steve Noonamaker.
But, well, this is still all for the same item, right? This is,
No, these are
No,
all
they're all
separate
different.
these are
items,
different.
all
Okay.
separate agenda items. Yep.
And where would the agenda item name actually start? Is this part of the item name, like right from here?
The agenda probably said,
Reallocate.
discuss reallocating the approved use of funds for capital improvement project.
Okay,
yada, yada. That is
gotcha.
what was on the agenda.
Mhm. Okay.
Then if it
So,
then if it says discuss and decide, then we'll have the discuss, and then underneath it, then we will have a motion with the approving the same exact item.
gotcha. Okay. So that helps with this as well, because I was wondering a little bit about that. So if we go down to like your resolution here, for instance, and I
Right,
know that,
that's on the consent, so you're not gonna see a motion.
oh, this resolution would be?
Yep, see the
Oh,
consent
okay.
agenda up there?
Mhm.
Okay, anything from there down to
Minutes.
minutes is all consent agenda.
Gotcha.
So that's approved with one motion.
With one motion. Okay. So I mean, if that's the case, is the motion just at the very bottom?
No,
Because it could be contracts and
up at a,
agreements.
yeah, after
Could be
the
up-
chairperson Rogers called the meeting to order and led the pledge of allegiance, then if there's no public comment, then the next motion is motion by so-and-so, second by so-and-so to approve the consent agenda as follows. And then you will see the resolutions, the contracts, the licenses and permits. Then your next motion will be to approve the minutes. Then there'll be a motion to approve claims.
Okay.
And Jesse, I think we might have talked last meeting between minutes and claims on the formal meetings for the Board of Supervisors. There probably needs to be a header that says regular agenda,
Yes,
And on this.
Yes.
yep,
but the items.
Be before
before
public
minutes,
comment.
before
Was it?
minutes. Before minutes. Minutes are
Okay.
not on the
Okay,
consent.
regular, yes, and then.
Gotcha. So we can help you with a lot of kind of the insert for things like for the informal agenda, when you're inserting the item name, where you're putting who's presenting the
Right.
item name and then maybe approve on Wednesday. For now, I'm just going to use this resolution as an example. We'll talk about votes here in a minute with consent. So let's say this was one that you needed that discussion piece on. You could type in the name of that person. So we could say, consultant, and then it's like discussed or whatever the item name may be is typically what it is, and you might phrase that verb. Is
So
that
you're
right?
talking about something on the regular agenda, not the consent.
Consent.
Yes, like
Right.
this example here.
Right, so-and-so presented this resolution. Yeah,
Okay. So in that instance, instead of having to copy and paste over or anything like that, you could type in the name and title of the person. And then with those snippets, that's where we bring in our item name. And so I created this one here as an example today, because this pulls in whatever the name of that item on the agenda was.
sure.
And, if it was discuss or, discuss rather than discussed, you might have to just change the word around. But you can insert that name, and it's same thing with the end of this is if it's something that's approved Wednesday on the formal meeting, you just insert the statement here again too.
Okay, so this is like on a Monday.
Yes.
And you presented a resolution approving the contract and performance. Then you just do the snippet, the board will approve on Wednesday.
Mhm. And we could combine them if this is something that's typically always inserted, but having them separated just gives you a little more freedom since it looks
It's
like
not.
all of them.
And it
Yeah.
takes 2 seconds to type.
Yeah. It all depends on, if you're trying to do this in the middle of the meeting, it's a little easier to pay attention to what's going on and just, click this rather than typing it out. But I just wanted to show you some of the options that we have here
Right.
to pull information in.
Right,
So you can always pull that item name in and then just edit it however you need to with that item name snippet here.
Yep.
On Wednesdays, we have to copy resolutions to approve.
Right, and then on Wednesday, I don't know if we're getting ahead of you, but when you have that consent agenda with a list of resolutions, we have to go in and provide the entire resolution or a summary of that resolution. Yep, right there.
At the moment, since this information is not being entered in CivicClerk, I can't pull it in like we are with the item name. If
Right.
this was entered in a text field somewhere on the item page, we could, because
Right,
we could do the same kind of thing with the sponsor, where if we had a field on the item page where people just selected the person that's presenting it, we could automatically pull their name and title in for you rather than having to type it each time.
yeah, we just cut and paste from whatever the department gives us.
Okay. Yeah, so I can't help here since this information isn't in CivicClerk. If it was, we can. So anything we have entered in CivicClerk, we can do. So that's just kind of what I wanted to figure out there. But you know, in terms of entering this, it's just clicking on each item or each section where a vote would happen. So for your votes for consent, for instance, you take that vote at the top of the consent. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
Well,
And so-
there's no vote. There's no vote. It says the board, what's the language? Vote other, board members voting aye unless otherwise noted.
Mhm.
So
And
the
so
only
this is,
time we enter a vote is if it's not unanimous,
mhm.
closed session, or somebody has to abstain. That's the only
Gotcha.
time we enter a vote.
Okay. And so it's that line that I have highlighted right there, right, is what it would normally be?
Yes.
No,
Well,
no, right up here, board members voting aye unless otherwise noted.
Yeah,
All
well,
the way
yes, but for the
top.
consent, this is what you
Yeah,
enter.
yes. Yes,
Okay. And so, all of this is again, things that we use snippets for. And there's two ways to do this when it comes to voting. Number one is with a snippet like this, just a plug and play, where it's just pulling in, your blanks, and then you go ahead and enter your information. But depending on how you'd like to use minutes, the other option that's available to you is the ability to track votes within CivicClerk. And that provides a few different things for you. Number one, it would allow you to just track votes and then insert without typing anything here. And so what you would start with is at the very beginning of the meeting when you are getting ready to start the meeting, we have this roll call button here in the top right. And this is available on any minutes page. If I go back to minutes up here, there's a roll call button that then pops up the names of my board members, which I put in a few of us as an example, just to show this feature off today. And I realize you don't have as many supervisors, so this would be a shorter list of names. But if everyone's present, we can mark them all as present. If anyone's absent, you can also select absent here. And what this does is once our roll is taken, if I go into my consent agenda to take a vote for it, I can go up to my motion here and it pulls up a quick vote. And you don't have to type anything in the motion name. Typically, it's just whatever the action is that they're asking you to do. You mark who initiated, who seconded the vote, and then since it sounds like most of your things are agreeable, mark all as yes. Final thing here is done. And what that allows you to do are a few things. Number one is we've got another, let me refresh our page here because I changed that snippet. If I use my consent snippet here again, it inserts that information automatically. So who initiates, who seconds. Right now I have it set to include titles, and so it's including the titles for everyone, but we could get rid of that as well. But what else this does for your public is if someone is looking at the overview of your meeting in your public portal here, like this customer, Pueblo, Colorado, if I click on their city council meeting for July 10th, they track their votes in the system. So while the public is looking at the agenda here, they can see how each motion and vote carried out on that meeting. So I can see how their consent agenda vote played out. Most of the time, if it's unanimous, it's all going to be, 7 or however many to 0. But if we get down here, some of these might have any kind of contention. No, these are all still 7, but it's just a really nice way to show this action on the public portal, because they can still look at the agenda and each individual attachment even over here. This is more like a truncated version that they can view. Any questions on that and how that works right now? And it becomes more useful the more complex your voting statements are. Yours for these are just, the statement of who motioned and who seconded. But Daniel put an example in chat of what a split vote would look like. And so if we had something like that in here, then we could automatically insert the names, who's absent, and so on, without you having to do that every time or having to, to get that formatted yourself.
So in the motion then, if you've already listed someone as absent in the roll call, what do they come up as in the motion? Does it show absent?
They don't hear and they wouldn't hear either, so that wouldn't show here. But if it's tracked in the system, like we have one absent here, for instance, if you give me one moment here to use that example that he sent us here, we'll just say, excuse me one moment here. All right, so I don't have this fully fixed because I didn't want to take the whole time doing that, but let's say we had a vote instead. Let's change this around. All right, we'll even say somebody voted no here. And so we've got 4-1. We'll resave it as passed. And now our roll call here is 5-1 present and absent. If I go here and insert this vote auto snippet, it inserts all of that information automatically for us. Now I didn't fix the motion by up here, so this would need to be different. But this could, if this is the name of the item, that can be inserted automatically. We could have the action insert automatically here, approve. So whatever you select here, that's what goes here. And then you can see down here, now this might not be the format since I pulled it from Zoom chat, but down here you can see a list of all who voted yes, who voted no, and then it also shows our absent member right here. And we can change what shows. If you want it to be the full name, we can do that. It just depends on what you want to display. Any questions on that? So I wanted to show you the capability of snippets here because I do think it's a really great feature depending on what you're doing. Since a lot of your information in the minutes seemed pretty repetitive in terms of pulling things from the item name and so on, I think you can have a lot of really great just time saving here with inserting an item name instead of copying and pasting. Again, the only thing you have to do is just, reread it and make sure the verbiage makes sense since it's going from the agenda into minutes. But anytime you need to insert a vote like this, you would just click on that section name. So we'll do it with consent. If you have a vote then for your contracts, you'd click on contracts and do the same thing and, keep going down each one. Now, the only thing that I think we'd have to build into the process, given how the rest of your minutes look, is I don't have any way of telling the system display the item names for these, but don't display the item names for this one. It's one or the other. And so right now the system does not display item names for any of these. So what we'd have to do here just very quickly is go into each of these items and just insert that item name like I'm doing here. And so just a quick insert of each of these. And so it's very easy, and quick to do, but it is something that we'd have to do to get it to display on the minutes. Any questions on that? What do you do? I did have a question here for public comment. What do you do here if there's none? Do you type that in or do you just not type anything at all?
We put nothing. If there's no public comment, there's nothing in the minutes.
Okay. And so that's one point that I would want to point out that might be a change or something that would need to change in CivicClerk, because every section and item has one line of placeholder on the minutes document. And so if you don't enter anything, it's just a blank line, which is okay. But then, in terms of formatting, you just have some random blank lines here and there is the issue. So for instance, we have something for call to order, pledge of allegiance, consent, and so on here. So let's go back to minutes now, right up top here. This takes us back to that summary page. And you can see over here on the right, actually, we can see how we're doing. So we can see what we've entered minutes for on each of our items and sections here. And so we're missing just that one here for public comment, which we'll keep blank for now so you can see what that show or looks like on your minutes. But once you have all your discussion in like this, or at any time, if you just enter a couple items and you want to see how that looks on your minutes, there's a view menu here that we used earlier to get to the summary. At the bottom, we also have a minutes preview button. So if you want to see what this document's looking like as you start to build it, you give that a click and it's going to take us to a quick layout of what this looks like. And so it's pretty similar to what that example looked like here. We've got that header up top that pulls in information like date and time and so on. And then here's that and our information we entered for call to order. Here's where the Pledge of Allegiance happened. And then you see this blank line. This is the public comment section right here that I was talking about. And
Okay, so when we are ready to send the minutes to the paper for publication,
Mhm.
we get rid of all these blank lines because we have to pay for that. And that we can do, right?
You will be given a Word document when you generate your minutes. And so if you wanted to go in and edit any formatting outside of what CivicClerk has done, you have that option as well.
Okay. Yeah, because we get rid of all these spaces.
All of it, yeah.
Save money. Yeah.
Yep. But does this work in terms of what this is doing right now, where it's inserting the minutes in place of the section name or item name?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. The only thing I don't like is that big space where public comment would go.
Yeah.
So we probably will just put none.
Mm-hmm. You could either put none, or the other option that you have. No, never mind. I wouldn't do that either, because you can always rearrange things on the minutes, but your signatures will always show up below everything that you are rearranging. So we won't worry about that. But that's kind of the only thing, is everything that's on the agenda has a place on a minutes document in CivicClerk.
Right.
And so we just have to have something in here. The other option is that I was exploring earlier today was just having these don't show anything, but then the problem is you can't do things like that call to order statement and Pledge of Allegiance if sections are not showing anything.
Right.
So minutes are a little more simplistic than what we get to do with the agenda, unfortunately. So that's the limitation we're at right now. But
Hey,
yes.
Daniel with conservation. So are you saying the item name cannot show up on the minutes?
I can do that per board. So if you would like the item name to show automatically for a specific board, I can do that, but I can't do it piecemeal on your board, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. Do you mean for like the conservation board, we can set it up to do that?
Yes, and then minutes would display directly below the item name. Is that what you typically would do?
Yeah, that's been typical.
Yeah, and so that's not a problem at all. If you give me one moment here, I can actually just show you an example. And so I actually have that design built because I wasn't sure if we needed that at all. So I just switched this one to that. And so you can see how these doubled up just now. That's because it's displaying the name and then I entered the name a second ago. But it would always show the item name and then your minutes directly below like this.
Okay, great.
And then, so are there actually, that's a good question at this point then, since we're looking at it, are there any other boards like the Board of Supervisors that does their minutes like this, where they don't display the section or item names? Okay. So if that's the case, I'll make sure the Board of Supervisors keeps this design, and then all the other boards will set with that different design. One thing here, we'll have a couple blank spaces because we didn't add minutes in everywhere, so there is a little bit of blank space here. But then at the end of your minutes, there is the respectfully submitted signatures, who was by, approved, and so on here. And so I know it's kind of broken up on a page here, but does this look about right for your signatures?
Right. I do have a question on that
Mhm.
consent agenda. You'll have, she always has an item listed, whether there's an item on the agenda or not. So when you look at your agenda, go back to your agenda.
Mhm.
You're gonna see, okay, reports. There's no reports. She has gone down contracts and agreements, but there's no contracts. There's no licenses.
Yeah.
So what's that gonna look like on the agenda, on the minutes?
So there are two options here with this. Number one is, if you're not typing anything in and you don't do anything about it, then there will be that blank space here if we go to the minutes preview. And so that's what all that blank space in between that resolution
Yeah.
vote I did, that's what all this is blank.
So Brett, we may need to talk about that, because when I used to do the agenda, if I didn't have an item, like if I didn't have a report, there was no report. If I didn't have a resolution, there was there was nothing on the agenda. I think what Bev does, and I don't know if she's on this, but it's like a template. So when she has a report, she plugs it in. When she has contracts, she plugs it in. But if there are no contracts that day, or there are no resolutions, you see what you see, like with reports, and so that doesn't look good in the minutes, to have those big open spaces, if there's no way to get rid of that.
Well, so if I could, there's one solution potentially, depending on what you would like to do with this. Number one is, we just put none, like you said. The other option, though, is if you don't have things like this and you want them on the formal agenda, you can create and generate and publish the agenda with these sections in there blank. And then after this, I can always click on a section here. So like public comment, right? We didn't have any. Once the agenda is published, and my dog might start barking because someone's knocking at the door, sorry. But there's a delete button here. And so I can delete any section that I don't want. And we'll cover this more in the agenda management. We could even open this up and delete multiple sections all at once.
Oh, okay.
And so what this does, if you've already published your agenda, it's not going to change what the agenda looks like, because it's static when you publish it. And so everything I've just done doesn't display on the published file.
Yeah.
But now that I've deleted these sections, if I go back to minutes pulls from the current version of your draft. And so public comments no longer here, and nor are a lot of the empty sections I deleted down here. And so you can delete sections after you've published an agenda. The only time that's going to really change anything that, it hopefully wouldn't be confusing, but the only thing that I'd want to point out with that is, here's my test agenda on my test site here. You can see it's got a few blank sections here. If I go into that agenda and delete something like approval of minutes, because there's no approval of minutes, it won't change it on this formal document, but the meeting overview, if I delete it, will no longer have those sections here. So if someone's using this to view your agenda, then they won't see those sections that were on the formal one. So there will be a discrepancy between the two agenda views here. That's really the only kind of issue with that.
So how come you can't edit those out before you publish an agenda, Jesse?
Oh, you can. No, if that's your policy, if you just delete any blank sections, feel free to do that before you publish.
Oh, okay. So you can take your template for that month and then go ahead and delete them before you publish.
Yes, yeah. The way CivicClerk works is every agenda that we set up has a or a list of standing sections and items. If you delete them on your current meeting, they pop right back up the next time you make an agenda. So they're always available to use, but if your process is to just remove empty sections before publication, then you'll just delete everything without an item, and then there wouldn't be a problem at all.
And then the minutes are built off that.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and so is it who's doing the agenda right now for Board of Supervisors? Do you leave empty sections on there?
That'll be Bev. She's not on this training, Jesse, because she doesn't do any in the minutes, so she'll be on the
Ah.
agenda training. But she does remove them, like Becky noted, so they won't be in the minutes either.
Oh.
So I think that's on the back end.
Well, then problem solved.
There you go.
Okay, so no blank spaces. And you'll know too, these tags are always a great way to see if you have any blanks, because anytime you don't see a discussion next to one of these, you'll know that you need to enter something or that you need to figure out what's going on with that section since it was blank. Are there any questions on this right now? Do you want to go over voting a little more? Is vote tracking something you're interested in doing in the system?
Those of you that take minutes, feel free to chime in if you want to go over that.
Becky got a phone call.
Oh,
so-
okay.
But I don't know that we would go that route.
Okay. So yeah, it's always available there. Like I said, it's got some really great added benefits with that vote display here. I don't know about the county, but we have a lot of locations with like a 24-hour action summary requirement, and this often satisfies it because these show up immediately after you save the vote, so they're there if you're tracking them during the meeting. Otherwise, it's really just a very simple system. You click on the item that you need to add information for, type in your info or insert your snippets as needed, and then you're all set. The signatures, by the way, are manageable as well. So if you need to change one, maybe somebody was out that meeting, so someone else took over for them for that specific meeting. If we go back to the agenda proper here, we'll click on agenda up top. It will take us back one. And if I open up our view menu here for our agenda, there is an option titled Agenda Fields. And we'll cover this more in the agenda management training as well. But Agenda Fields is where all of the custom text for an agenda lives. And so we've got some information for the agenda, but then down below that, the last few fields are all for the minutes. So once you have any kind of turnover, if you have different auditors, or if minutes are approved by somebody else, if your chair changes, you can always update these per meeting and they'll revert back to their defaults, or you can also permanently change the defaults when that needs to happen.
I have another question. When we go back to the agenda and items that are not like, there's always a lot of items on the agenda that nothing ever happens. So it's like
Legislative.
correspondence, keep going up and down.
We
Or-
deleted a few, so you might not.
Okay,
see some
so there's
exhibit.
always appointments, correspondence. Seems like there's something else.
Legislative update.
Yeah, there can be legislative update, payroll authorization. I mean, there's usually a list of things that nothing ever happens. There's nothing. So it's gonna show that big space in the minutes, right?
So it shows on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, because we did determine that.
It has to show on those have
Uh-huh.
to show on the agenda in case the board has to take action.
Yeah, so something has to be there. We could, you could just insert the name again and say none, but
See, that's really, so then when I go to publish it in the paper, then I can get rid of all that space, because that's gonna be a big waste of money.
yeah. So, if once you're ready to create your minutes and work with them, however you would be, if it's just, to put it on to the next meeting or to publish officially, we go to on the agenda page here, the orange menu that you see right here, and open that up and go to agenda files. Now, normally there would be 2 files in here already, one for the agenda, one for the packet, since we'd already published that. Today, though, since we did this one before our agenda management training, we don't have that here to see. But it's the same page here. We create and upload at this top section. And so the green create button allows us to create any document we need from what we're creating here, our agenda, our packet, and also our minutes, as you see here. And so minutes we can then select, we'll name, which we would normally name the name of the board, the type of file, and the date is typically what I recommend, just to make sure we're not confusing people on what we're creating. So we'd say something like minutes and then put in our date. This one was for 7/18/2023 here. One thing I didn't cover is we can rearrange items on the agenda in the minutes feature. Do you do that ever? Do you
Yes.
reorder items? Okay.
After, so there may be times that they need to move somebody up to the top
Mhm.
or move somebody down. Yeah, we do that. Mhm.
Okay. So on that summary page that we're looking at right now, there is a reorder button here on the right hand side.
Okay.
And so you can go ahead and reorder anything that you'd like here if needed. You could pull a whole section up if you really needed to do that. You could do just one item if it gets pulled down, anything like that. If there's numbering on it, so I know some of the other boards have numberings for their items and sections. It does not renumber those. It keeps the number out of order, so you know item 8 was addressed 3rd or something like that. But you can very quickly move these around. Let's just move one of these down into reports as an example here. Hit save. And the reason I brought that up is because when you're creating your minutes file back here, one of the questions you have to answer is which item order do you want to use? Do you want the agenda item order or the minutes item order for your document? If you move things around, select that second one, we hit create, and now the system creates a PDF, Word, and HTML version of these documents. And so you can go ahead and open up the Word file and make any edits you'd like. So, we try to keep all of our font sizes at 12 point, simply because that's more ADA compliant. But if you needed to shrink it down to send to the newspaper or something like that, you can go in here and edit and start removing those. You can also, I don't know how you sign your minutes, but if you send them to DocuSign, that the PDF version is there as well that you can send out or whatever you may need. But this is just created, by the way. This has not been published. So this is just, here for us to then take and put onto the next meeting's agenda for approval. Once they're approved and signed, when you want to post, our publish option is right down here. And we'll cover this again in the agenda management training for the agenda and packet. But once they're approved and finally ready to be posted, we can go to publish. We can open up, actually, you know what you'd want to do if you're going to go in and make your edits here first into a Word or with a Word document, you'd probably want to re-upload that new version that's cleaner here as well. So what we do is we repeat that create process, but instead of creating it in system, we use the upload feature here, and then we would switch over to minutes file, and you might just say, minutes signed or final, whatever that ends up being. I can then click on this green box or cloud and dotted box right here to then find that file. So here's that minutes document. Let's say it's cleaned up now. I'll hit open and it uploads that file. And so now I have my original version here, which we listed here, and the signed version, which is now uploaded and also converted to a PDF just in case we need that. And then I can finally go down to publish here, this orange button rather. And then the third option here, which is for the public portal, is our minutes to publish. So when you're ready to actually put them out onto the portal, you have the option to publish either version that we have up here. We want the signed version to go out, so we would then select signed. And then to publish, if you're publishing immediately, you use the published option right here. Minutes typically would be published like that, but if you want to just schedule a date, maybe I want to publish these tomorrow, I can click on this calendar feature instead and select tomorrow or any day that I want to publish my document. That way it would then send it out whenever needed. But let's go ahead, we'll just publish this really quick. You hit publish and it refreshes, and now if someone was to look at your public portal, they'd be able to look at the minutes for this meeting. Any questions on that? All right. So that pretty much covers minutes today. The last thing that I want to show you, though, since we have some time, is I would like to show you the snippet feature. So if you would like to add any of your own snippets and create ones for each board, you know, I know we have some people from other boards on here. If you have snippets that you would like to enter, you can do that as well, or you can ask one of the admins to help you get these in there. So you can get them formatted and then send them along, and we can get those in there for you. But if you'd like to make a snippet, it's very easy to do. We go up to this gold circle up here, and again, not everyone would have access to this since it's a system admin setting, but I'll show you the format so you can at least create yours and get them added, or have an admin add them. But if we go to settings here, and then to the meetings tile, the second one right here, this would allow us to take a look at a lot of our agenda customization. And in particular today, we're looking at the text snippet option at the bottom here. And so this is where we have a few different menus. We've got one for items. So if you wanted some default stock language for items that people could use, that's what this top one's for. Our next one, though, is for the minutes feature. And so anything we put in here shows up in that drop down that we had. You can see up here, I've got some of those plug and plays, the call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, for instance. And so it's just if I click edit over here on the right, it's just a stock piece of text that gets inserted each time. If you are going to make ones for each board, it's also advisable to do something like this as well, just so we know what snippet or what board that snippet's been made for. It is a shared menu across boards, just as an FYI. But if you wanted to make your own snippet, you simply open up a new minute snippet here, type in your text, whatever it may be, put in the name of that snippet that you want to be able to find it by, and then that's it. So you can make any kind of snippet you want, as many as you'd like. It is a shared menu, as I mentioned, but there is no limit to the number of snippets that you have. It's a bit of a soft limit in terms of how many are you willing to scroll through. But if you're signifying things with BOS or conservation or something like that, so you know what these snippets are made for, we can always hit the edit order button right here and drag and drop our snippets into groups or clusters if we'd like. So, often I like to set these in order of how they would appear on the agenda. So we could always put adjournment at the bottom, and it would add that toward the bottom of the list there. So lots of really great ways to use this. We have those initial plug-in plays right here, but then you can see things like this item name. It's using what we call a merge tag to pull that information from the system. If you want to get a little more complicated with your snippets where you're inserting the information automatically, let's actually take a look at this vote auto snippet that I created quickly for us. If I click edit, you'll see it's got that layout of info that was put into Zoom chat for us. If we wanted to clean this up and then make this a little more automated, we might, spread that out a little bit. And you can see these tags here, yes, title, last name. These are all found in the merge tag menu that you see right here. And so everything in this menu is a tag or piece of information that you can pull from somewhere else in the system. A lot of this is used mainly for agenda design, so most of this you don't have to worry about. But there are a few important ones up top here, like the event date. You can pull those things in automatically. You can pull in things like the location and time, even your link to the agenda. But if you scroll about 2/3 of the way down this list and wait for it to repeat alphabetically, you get to a section called minutes tags here. And this is where we really pull in those complex pieces of information. So if you're tracking your vote in the system, you can pull in who motioned it, their title and last name, the action you type in. There's roll call snippets as well. So we could have taken that roll call piece that we did for call to order and had those names get put in automatically. So you don't have to manage them and switch them back and forth between present and absent. It simply does it for you. There are vote summaries. Here's our second by tags. And so we can see who seconded motion. So, if we went up here and we've got this seconded by, I would just go ahead and open up our tag. And if all we want is the last name or title and last name, we'll select that. Same thing here for our motion by, we'd find that tag. It's all alphabetical. And it's pretty logical in terms of what it's going to give you, right? It'll tell you the title and last name of who motioned. And, down here, we've got things like vote result, passed or failed, abstain count, abstain names, vote no count, vote yes names, and so on here. And so it's all pretty straightforward. It just takes a minute to kind of get the hang of. But I think these can be a really wonderful addition to those of you who have some repetitive text in your minutes. If you're interested in learning more, I'm always happy to help out with that. But yeah, let us know, and we're always happy to help you get these set up, or at least set up a few with you until you get the hang of it. And so you can really make these handy here. So you can see this will pull in who motioned it, who seconded it, the name of the item, and then how the vote carried out and who was absent. So really, really nice to pull in all that information. You just track it with a couple clicks and it inserts automatically. But that's it for me today. Are there any questions right now? My takeaways right now is I'm going to make sure that the agendas other than the Board of Supervisors do not have the same design. They'll actually use the item name and then discussion will fall underneath. So I'll get that switched around. But any other questions I can answer right now?
Jesse, can you talk about the help center?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So everything I've covered today and then some, and everything we will cover or have covered is always available in our CivicClerk Help Center, which you can get to by going up to the gold circle with our initials in it, like we did to get to settings, opening that up, and then clicking the Help Center option second from the top here. This will take you to our CivicClerk Help Center, which is already rebranded. We're actually undergoing some rebranding for a few of our products. And so you can see it's our select product under our agenda and meeting management, but I promise you're in the right spot. And so if you want to do something related to minutes, you can start typing in that feature here, or you can go down to agendas and events, and we've got a minute section right here as well. So you can take a look at adding a motion if you want to learn how to do some voting, how to add speakers, which we didn't cover today because it's really not used outside of our live meeting management. A lot of this is for our live meeting management for minutes, but it is a really handy way to just quickly look up how to do something. We've got these click-through tutorials that I love because they will make you click on every button that you need in order to do what you want. So this will take you into the minutes feature. So we can add a motion, right? We'd find our item, click that motion button here, and then just enter our information. We've also got screenshots below if that's more your style, if you don't want to click through things. A lot of really great options here. This is probably the most visited website I've ever had in this job. I always check it out, even for things that I don't use very often. So I think it's a great resource whenever you're questioning how to do something. Any other questions today?
I'm assuming.
Jessica, there's an option to print those, correct?
Yes, if you hit the three dots right here, you can download a PDF if you'd like, and you can make your own workbook or anything like that.
Perfect.
So obviously closed minutes aren't public, so we'll just keep doing those in-house. Closed session minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, if you have a closed session section on your agenda, you could do them just in-house, or, you could do all of your public facing minutes first, generate your document so you have a public version, and then go in, put in your closed session minutes and generate a closed session minutes document and just keep it internal. So, you could create them in CivicClerk. You don't have to publish them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Would there be benefit for the Board of Supervisors, for example? We have different people creating the agenda and serving as agenda managers, and different people who are doing the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Their value in having both of those groups attend agenda management training? Will there be some crossover? I don't
we'll
want to
go
waste
over
anybody's time, but I also
Mhm.
don't want people to miss out on information that could be valuable.
Probably not. I mean, we'll go over publishing a little more in depth, but it'll be all related to an agenda and packet. So for the minute takers, I think we've covered everything we need to today.
Okay.
But it does show you just a little more in depth of how the system works. So it could be helpful, but it probably won't cover anything that they would need to use.
Okay, I just know we talked about both of them today, so I
Mhm.
didn't know if I didn't want anybody to miss out on information.
No, I think we're all set there. Okay. Well, I will send this recording as soon as I can today. And then we'll see some of you again for the agenda management training or what have you. But I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Bye.